So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this second webinar of the JoinHealth 2025 Spring Series. And this webinar will be dedicated to health data protection and privacy. And this webinar is co-organized by the Health Cluster Portugal and the EIT Health InnoStars. And I am Juliana Alves. I am an Innovation Project Manager at Health Cluster Portugal, and I will be moderating this webinar today. So this webinar, the Join Health webinars, are organized within the DigiHealth PT initiative, that is the Portuguese Digital Innovation Hub for Health, that was designed to promote the digital transformation across the healthcare sector. And I would like to start by thanking to our speakers of today, Yuri Rodrigues and Catarina Rodrigues. Yuri is a lawyer and an expert in health law, data protection, and international health data regulation. And Catarina is a clinical research associate and a startup expert at 2CA Braga. And today's webinar was designed to guide us through the planning need to ensure privacy and data protection in the development of artificial intelligence models based on health data. And we will explore how the European legal framework on privacy interacts with the product safe regulations, including AI Act, MDR, and AVDR. So the agenda for today is divided in two main parts. The first part, Yuri will cover three main topics. The first one related to the use of health databases for training artificial intelligence models. In the second will focus on the concept of privacy accountability by design. And in the last topic, Yuri will focus on how to summarize the data protection evidence following data protection impact assessment. In the second part, we will have Catarina presenting a use case focusing on the measures and requirements for using health data from healthcare institutions and how health tech companies should be prepared or should prepare to do a clinical study to develop when they are developing an artificial intelligence algorithm. And to the audience, thank you for attending. And before we move on to the presentations, I would like just to leave a few notes. The first one is that the presentations will be available for those who request them by filling in a survey that we will share after the webinar. Also, that the recording of this webinar will be available at the Health Cluster Portugal YouTube channel. And I would like also to invite you to leave your comments and questions for the speakers using the Q&A tool. And after each presentation, we will have a Q&A session and we can address the questions that you will be leaving in the tool during the speakers' presentations. And now moving to the first presentation delivered by Yuri. Yuri is a legal expert in health law, data protection, and international tech regulation. He holds certifications in privacy and data protection from the International Association of Privacy Professionals and in Netherlands. And he was selected by the European Data Protection Board as an expert on new technologies. And he contributes also to the European Artificial Intelligence Office Code for Practice for General Purpose Artificial Intelligence. Yuri, You may start when you are ready.
Thank you, Juliana. I would like to also express my gratitude to Health Cluster Portugal for the invitation. Also, thank the audience for the interest and the opportunity to shed some light in our sort of privacy roadmap. From development to the market of AI-based medical device and product. Our intention here is to address the main challenges, interplaying the legal requirements with the organizational and technical measures, also with the intended and most common business models in medtech sector. Not going deep in any of those matters, but providing a overview in order to prepare the audience for their further challenges. Following the agenda, in the part one, we will explain a little bit in a hypothesis approach what consists the training AI models. And then we will try to address for each phase of this training process how to ensure the lawfulness of the collection and processing of those representative health databases. From the beginning, it's important to establish what could be the phase of dataset preparation. In a nutshell, dataset preparation for AI intended to be part of a medical device as a safety component. And here we can use as a use case the hypothesis of software embedded with software as a medical device embedded with AI. This data set preparation could rely on obtaining data with the healthcare institutions, for example, and probably in a near future through the European health data space, labeling data and probably applying pseudonymization techniques, providing storage, splitting, analysis, and reusing, reprocessing. Those data sets could manifest in three different objectives for the same data sets from the beginning and to the end of the development phase. Probably here we can in analogy think about this moment divided into training data sets to train the models, validation tests to select the best model, and test sets to obtain the unbiased outcomes in order to demonstrate probably the safety and the performance of the model in order, of course, to obtain in a near future the approval in the third-party assessment in order to obtain CA mark and then go to the market. So it's not possible prepare data sets or actually develop AI models for medical device without processing health-related data. And this introduction is important to understand why we are handling here the privacy challenges. Once privacy is in the core of biomedical innovation, it's not even more when you are using or intended to use or to create to develop AI models for medical purpose. So once we establish the basics context for our discussion, we move to the data protection basics approach for AI and MD, AI and medical device, MD. from the privacy perspective, we can look at this issue from different perspectives. We could look at this context from the medical device regulations perspective, from the AI Act perspective, but here we are selecting for scope limitation and time, looking only from the privacy perspective, interplaying, of course, with the parallel regulations that our context evokes. So in the roots of the fundamental rights, and here we are in our context, we are addressing the fundamental rights concerning health, privacy, and data protection. Those fundamental rights are deep rooted as fundamental rights in EU primary law. And when we are talking about EU primary law, we are talking about the treaties, the convention, international conventions. We are talking about the roots of European Union, for example. And here we can mention those provisions in European Convention on Human Rights, the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union, and then abroad the EU borders, we are talking about the Convention 108 concerning individuals' automatic data processing, personal data processing. And then in the secondary law in EU, those broad fundamental rights are established with concrete requirements in mainly GDPR from privacy perspective, and for the others perspective, but interplaying with privacy, mainly interplaying with medical device regulation, IVD, but we are not addressing IVD here, only medical device regulation, and artificial intelligence Act. And here, my proposal is to address the concrete requirements of the EU secondary law, mainly the agnostic GDPR. Agnostic once GDPR is not providing what technique we should apply to comply with the requirement, and do this intentional lack of methodology of the GDPR, MDR, and AI Act, my suggestion is complementing the broad requirements from secondary EU law with industry voluntary standards in order to fulfill the intentional lack of methodology, and then be able to demonstrate compliance and traceability of the processes of development and deployment of those technologies. It's not possible to keep a discussion the matter without establishing the key definitions for our conversation. First of all, no one has doubt concerning probably that it's not possible to develop AI models without processing data. But and without outside the health sector, AI is not relying only in personal data, but inside health sector, AI is always relying in personal data processing. And in this scope, we should understand what is personal data. Personal data, according to GDPR, and the provisions are in the left in the presentation, and you can check. Personal data is any direct or indirectly identified information related to an individual person, including pseudonymized data, which means non-anonymous data, and for this reason, still personal data, which are subject to those risk mitigation measures. So, are still personal data encrypted clinical episodes, NHS numbers, clinical notes, even codified notes and codified files. And then we have special categories of those personal data. Those special categories fall into an exhaustive list of what means sensitive personal data. And within this list of sensitive personal data, we should keep in mind genetic data and other health concerning data. This is what we should keep in mind. In our case, we are always processing sensitive data. And for the sake of security, those sensitive data rely on more strict conditions for lawful data processing. Personal data processing consists in a series of processing activities from collection to erasure. I used to say that everything that we are doing with health data is data processing from the privacy perspective. It is not efficient to think about each definition of processing data. We should keep in mind that from collection to erasure, we are talking about data processing. For example, in our case, training AI models in health results, of course, a series of data processing activities. Okay, once we already know those first basic concepts, we should also consider what is data controller. Data controller is a natural person, of course, only in professional activities like or such as self-employed professionals, such as medical doctors, or and in our cases, we're talking about mainly about legal persons who defines the means and the purposes of the data processing. And here we could say, for example, that medical device manufacturers, AI suppliers, and AI deployers, depending on the case, would be data controllers. For example, as a sponsor of a clinical study would be data controller. And then we have the data processor. Data processor is a natural or legal person which process the personal data on behalf of the controller. And here, the processor, the difference between one and another is that processor is not defining the means and the purpose of the data processing. Data controller, that is not a requirement that data controller processes the data. It's not necessary. What is necessary to rely on the data controller role is define the means and the purpose of processing. If a sponsor is choosing a CRO to conduct all the clinical study, but this CRO is not defining the protocol of the study, probably the CRO is a data processor on behalf of the sponsor as data controller, for example. Depending on the case, the roles can change. And then we should consider what is the lawfulness principle and then understand what is legal basis. And lawfulness principles results in a prior condition to fulfill before any data processing activities. Those conditions are supported on the most adequate fulfillment of legal bases. Legal bases are non-hierarchical and exhaustive list of lawful hypotheses to support the licit data processing activities from the collection to the erasure. In the case of AI, we're talking about from the collection and preparing data sets from the going to the market and offering the device or product embedded with medical device or without medical device. Once the data processing is not only about AI, data processing is about anything, including just records in papers, for example. If you have records in paper, for example, we are conducting the data processing activity called by storage. So there is no difference between paper storage with data and electronic health storage with personal data. So one more important definition, and then now under AI Act and medical device regulation is what is artificial intelligence. The binding definitions is artificial intelligence is a machine-based system with different levels of of autonomy and post-deployment adaptation. If the model or the machine learning algorithm rely on this definition, so we have in a broad term artificial intelligence systems. Training data, for example, is the training for validation, training, and testing data. Collectively, for the sake of clarity, we will refer to this sort of different phases of training. We will only refer to training data, which includes training, validation, and testing data. So training data is important to train the AI model and results processing activities. It is necessary to ensure the high quality and safety and security of the final product, and is necessary to be able to demonstrate the safety and this performance requirement to the notified bodies in order to be approved in the third-party assessment, in order to obtain the CA mark and then go to the market and offer those safe and the safe product to the final users. And probably you are talking about patients. If you are not processing the necessary amount of representative data sets, probably you are putting harms on the healthcare of the final user. Probably our patient will be in prejudice once our model as a medical device is not working very well, but in health, not to work very well leads to very bad consequences, as you can imagine. So we need to understand in this context what is medical device, and medical device in a broad manner and approach is any instrument, apparatus, appliance, including software, implant, and all sort of combinations, alone or in combination, for use in human beings with a specific medical purpose. So if you are using AI with the specific medical purpose, being AI software, probably you are talking about AI into a software as a medical device, or AI as itself a medical device. So software medical device is a subset of medical device, standalone or embedded with other components, with hardware or not, only software or software and hardware. And AI can be embedded in this software as a component of this more complex product or device. Most of AI as a medical device are used for the following most common use cases: for diagnosis, screening, and prognosis, especially advanced in medical image. Then, when we have this sort of AI into medical device, we are talking about, based on AI Act definition, we are talking about high-risk AI. Once this AI probably will be a safety component of an more complex medical device, provided that there is an intention to put those products in your market. In general, from the medical device regulation perspective, AI as a software as a medical device rely on the classification of Class 2A. Once the purpose of this device is to provide, as we said, diagnosis, screening, and prognosis. This is important, recalling the privacy perspective, to understand what would be the intended purpose, not only the device, but also based on the device purpose of the data processing activities. We cannot process health data without a specific purpose, and those purposes must, to be lawful, must rely on the legal basis. The legal basis depends on the purpose. So connecting those regulations, we have here a clear intersection in how to connect them. I would suggest to not look at the issues in isolations. Uh, Probably the best approach is look at these three components, uh, of course, prioritizing the angle. But for example, we are looking at by the privacy angle, but it's not possible to extract the best approach looking at privacy in isolation, for example, or medical device in isolation. Would not be the best approach. Look at privacy, ignoring medical device regulation, AI in AI regulation, for example. So the best approach is look in at the specific matter, but considering the parallel influences. Defining AI as a medical device and its classification, the common classification as class 2A. So here we have a decision step provided by European Commission in order to access if the device at stake would be medical device software. I will not look deep into this step, but it's only to provide you how to think about this device would be or not software medical device, or even device could be, it could be, for example, a wellness app and not medical device. But even as a wellness app using AI, we will rely on AI Act requirements and also GDPR requirements, but probably not connecting MDR requirements. So this approach is important, and for this reason, I advise to look at this situation in integrating those parallel regulations. Explain a little bit more why AI software as a medical device would be high risk AI, and we already know. And I should mention that once we are talking about AI software medical device, as is the medical device standalone, uh, those devices are subject to pre-market third-party assessments. Probably the manufacturers and AI suppliers will develop those devices, um, collecting first the data set for training, testing, and validation. And the objective and the reason for these needs is to demonstrate compliance to the third-party assessment. So without processing data, not going to the market. So we should consider how to ensure the lawfulness of this process in the different phases. For the sake of clarity, we will divide into two moments. The first one, development, and the second one, the deployment. Probably healthcare units will mostly rely on deployment moment, and the manufacturers probably and suppliers probably in both, in the development and deployment. Probably, for example, if medical device manufacturer intends to use as part of this medical device AI models, probably this medical device manufacturer will be the deployer in the first moment, deploying a third-party AI as an API in its complex product. And then when offering this product, this complex product to the market, we'll assume the role of AI supplier using the third-party AI model, for example. But in the other side, healthcare units will probably use the final product, and then using the final product without putting anything else in its composition, probably this healthcare unit will be the deployer of the software as a medical device, or AI as a software as a medical device. We will deploy this product in the specific internal context, and then harmonize with internal procedures, internal policies, including policies relating to privacy, but not only, depending on the case. So we already know that it's not possible and not safe produce AI and software medical device without using high quality training, validation, and testing data sets. So we should remember that once the GDPR, Medical Device Regulation, and AI Act are technically neutral or agnostic, uh, we benefit of using in industry sector specific standard and measures that welcomed by EU law concerning privacy, medical device, and artificial intelligence. When I'm talking about privacy, we are using a risk regulation, a risk approach regulation. GDPR is trying to mitigate the risk of data processing activities through the data protection means. And these means could be translated in measures. Those measures could be, or actually can be, technical, IT, for example, organizational, when we are deploying the software or the device into the organizational context, and legal, we are talking probably about data processing agreements, AI procurement contracts, software as a service contract, and all sorts of contractual measure. Here, we cannot look at these issues only considering one component of the three components concerning compliance in those contexts. We should address in parallel the legal requirements, technical requirements, and organizational requirements and measures. And here we can mention some reference of standards that can help to comply with the neutral requirements of the three regulation at stake. Here we are addressing only in this graphic only the number 4 concerning privacy, but I should refer that when I talk about compliance of these complex products, we should address all requirements that these complex products evokes. So my advice is not only looking at privacy, not only looking at product safety, looking at all this in connection. Okay. Once you already know that GDPR provides an exhaustive and restrictive list of legal bases for personal data processing, to this processing to be considered lawful from the collection to the market, we should think about concerning the legal basis setting out in Article 6 and Article 9 of the GDPR. And when we are talking about sensitive data, it's important to apply in confluence the legal basis of these two articles. And those legal bases are, firstly, non-hierarchical. There is no preference between legal bases. And they are exhaustive. There is no legal basis to support your processing outside those two articles. So there is no obligation to prioritize the application of one of the legal bases commonly and mostly probably users or know it. I'm here referring to consent. We are not obligated to always rely our data processing on consent of the data subject. We should rely, or we could rely, not should. There is no should in this context, that provided that there is no prioritization of legal basis. We should then select the most appropriate legal basis according to our purposes. So understanding the medical device intended purpose that rely on the medical device regulation can be important to provide the lawfulness of the data processor under general data protection regulation. So this is important. This is the exercise that is in the heart of the development of those products. For example, we could rely on consent, contract execution, legal obligation, vital interest, public task, legitimate interest, and for in confluence with the Article 6 and Article 9. For example, I could rely the lawfulness and the lawful basis of the clinical study concerning AI, assuming the hypothesis of a retrospective study that there is no direct contact with the patient and is not possible, obviously. So I could rely, for example, but this is not a rule. This is a legal exercise based on the reality of the project. I could rely our lawfulness of these data processing activities for each purpose, because we should address for each purpose or each data processing activity the correct legal basis. Is not only one legal basis for all process, depending on the process, on the phases, the objective, the purpose of the process. But concerning collecting the data, for example, in a hypothetical example, I could rely the lawfulness and the legal basis for this collection, for this purpose of pre-market study on legitimate interest of the data controller, probably the AI supplier or medical device manufacturer, and in confluence with clinical research matters, and then the confluence between Article 6 and 9. But this is not a rule. For the same purpose, and for the same example, I could, for example, rely our lawfulness, our legal basis on consent, actually. So there is no rule and preference in this context. We should be able to demonstrate why we are choosing one legal basis, why, how, and how we will guarantee the safety of this process and rely on this legal basis. So recalling the data processing activities, we should probably address for each of these purposes, what is the legal basis, the most appropriate legal basis. This is an illustrative example, but I think we are able to now understand how it works. So, what is the consequence of unlawful data processing? This is very bad. Once I can affect in all the development and the market phase if I am developing a model based on unlawful data processing. It could be due to non-correct and appropriate legal basis applicants, or not applying at all any legal basis, collecting data without demonstrating how we will guarantee and ensure the safety of this data processing and the responsibilities. So, for example, when a data processing the deployment phase is based on the controller or third-party legitimate interest, if the original data collection was unlawful, for example, based on consent, and these consent conditions are not appropriate, for example, due to not informing data subject about this secondary processing purpose, probably when assessing the legitimate interest adequacy as legal basis for this secondary processing, probably it could be poisoned and compromised. So from this point on, I have illegal data processing with a lot of bad consequences, likely infringement, and then probably temporary or definitive ban of the processing, fines, civil compensation, material damage for the data subject concerning business partners, and also device market withdrawal. This is the consequence of unlawful data processing. So once we already know those essential concepts, and I should be fast in order to respect the time, I should mention what is the difference between the approach of AI Act and MDR versus GDPR. When I talk about product safety, we're talking about MDR and AI Act. When you are talking about fundamental rights, privacy, for example, we are talking mainly about GDPR. AI Act is a sort of medley between fundamental rights and product safety. Once you are talking about some uh, requirement for protecting fundamental rights, for example, discrimination, and non-discrimination, and etc. And GDPR, we are specifically protecting a fundamental right. We are protecting privacy through data protection means. So we're not talking about product safety, MDR and AI Act. Mainly, you are talking about submitting to a third-party assessment, to external assessment, our product in order to be able to be approved and then access your market. When we are talking about GDPR, we're talking about self-accountability. We're not obligated to submit our, for example, data protection impact assessment to a third-party assessment. We should only submit this for example, a prior consultation to data protection authority. For example, if any project, AI or not, rely on data processing when after the peer mitigation measures, those measures are not enough to mitigate those high risks, and we still have high residual risks. In those cases, we should submit our DP, our product, our processing activity to a private consultation in data protection authority. But this is not the common rule. This is an exception. So there is difference, but in some cases, notified bodies used to ask for the privacy and cybersecurity measures in order to approve your device. So there is a lot of connection. There is difference, but there is a lot of connection and benefits between complying with one regime and another. So addressing privacy accountability by design, we should conduct data protection impact assessment. This assessment is mandatory where a type of data processing, in particular, we're using new technologies, as is our case, in large scale of special category of personal data. In our case, of course, health-related data. DPA is mandatory. The DPA is a living tool, is not a document. What results of the DPA is what stakeholders want to see. And stakeholders want to see the summary of the implemented TOMs, technical and organizational measures and legal measures. Those measures will result after the DPA, after conducting the DPA. DPA is a living process, actually, also a living document. When we have a product or device update, we should update also the DPA. Once updating the capabilities, probably we will also influence the risks, and then we should address these new risks. We should address the lawfulness of these new data processing activities, and this is the rationale behind the DPA process. The peer process is well conducted when guided by a privacy expert. We could say here a data protection officer, and should involve the cross-disciplinary team. We should involve, for example, CISO from a cybersecurity perspective. We should involve business product owner, business development people, legal practitioners, legal counsels, for example. We should involve all those important persons and roles. We should conduct DPR, the same DPR for different purpose for pre-market study, and this DPR is not the same DPR of the final product. The first one is pre-market study in order to obtain the data for the data sets. And then once we already have the final product, we should conduct DPR in order to demonstrate how our product comply with data protection laws and parallel regulations. So in the end, I should mention some examples of how to summarize the data protection evidence after the PIR, assuming the product as example. We should, for example, address these, how can I say? We should address these topics, for example. It's not simple. A good DPR has more than 100 pages. This is a very complex process, but to be robust, it needs to be actually considered, for example, demonstrate what is the methodology used, for example, what standards I'm using to conduct my DPR, based on what I'm complying with DPR requirements. It's not only by my mind. This is based on industry standards, specific industry standards for this and this and another measure. The details of the software, the technical architecture, and here there is a lot of engineering work here. Also, the legal work here concerning records of processing activities, what is the lawful basis for each processing activity, identifying each processing activity, each purpose, each lawful basis, and then, of course, what is the implemented for this context and architecture, what is the implemented legal, technical, and organizational measures to mitigate the identified risks. Stakeholders wants to see exactly, probably, not exactly, but probably the evidence of those topics. A final product, for example, could present the architecture of data flow, for example. This is too simple, but it is in order to illustrate what should be addressed here. We should provide evidence of the architecture of the model of the most complex product embedded with the model, and try to demonstrate to the stakeholders how it works, and for its capability, how we are addressing the risks and what is the risk for each capability, each process. There is no a common and general risk. We should be able to demonstrate those requirements. Safety of medical device AI goes beyond cybersecurity. It's important to look at architecture, legal context, business model, and always is good rely on those complex activities and auditing process on the relevant international standard welcomed by GDPR. Thank you, and I'm at your disposal for the questions now and or after. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yuri. Once again, I remind those in the audience that they can ask questions to Yuri using the Q&A tool. And we have here already two questions for Yuri. The first one is there a limitation for transparent sharing of reports with data such as number of admissions, mortality rates by disease, by procedure, costs from healthcare services providers in the Portuguese SNS? And you are
Sorry,
muted.
sorry, I was. Can you repeat, please? I was
Yeah.
not
Uh,
listening very well.
okay. Is there a limitation for transparent sharing of
Mhm.
reports with data such as number of admissions, mortality rates by disease, by procedures, costs from healthcare services providers in the Portuguese SNS?
I cannot respond this specific question concerning
Mhm,
Portugal SNS, but if
mhm.
you are talking about submitting evidence to authorities, I think we should.
Yeah, and sharing, I think it was sharing limitations in sharing reports with this data. Can
Of course, yeah,
within,
yeah. The sharing limitations rely on the necessary for the purpose. I will not
okay.
share, for example, all clinical database when
Mm-hmm,
for the sake of the purpose, I just need to share, for example, a number of age and not the birthday date, for
mm-hmm,
example. I
okay.
can provide only the necessary. It's the necessary is the age. I only
Mm-hmm,
providing the age,
okay.
limiting the
Mm-hmm.
data processing activities and limiting the purposes to
And
the essential.
there was here another question related to the first one, that is, are there requirements or rules different from private and public healthcare providers in this aspect of sharing reports?
No, actually, in broad terms, no. Once GDPR applies to both private and public institution in the same manner.
Mhm. So I don't know if this question was clearly answered. Otherwise, I invite the person that wrote it to elaborate a little bit more on the question if necessary. Um, the other question is, are health apps used by patients and health professionals a medical device?
Depending on the intended purpose. If I have medical purpose, probably yes. If not, we're talking about wellness apps.
Mm-hmm.
But being wellness app or not, being medical device or not, just on being, for example, wellness app,
Mm-hmm.
if is embedded into this product, AI, we are not subject to probably medical device regulation, but still needs to respect GDPR and AI Act.
Mm-hmm. Um, we have here another question that is from Cesar. Um, is it possible to have a medical device, um, to a software as medical device with embedded artificial intelligence that is not a high risk artificial intelligence system?
I think I think it's not. If this device is intended to be placed on your market, it's not possible. If
Mm-hmm.
not, if the development is in-house, probably cannot be high risk. But if you are producing AI models, medical device embedded with AI models, in
Mm-hmm.
order to put at disposal of the EU market, uh,
Mm-hmm.
there is no chance to not be high risk AI. Once, if it is a medical device, there is a medical purpose. If there is
Okay.
no medical purpose, it's not medical
Medical
device.
device. Okay. Another question, and this is from my side. And when we are collecting health data from multiple European countries for training an artificial intelligence model, what are the biggest cross-border legal issues companies will face? and how should we prepare to be collecting data from different countries?
First of all, thank you, you all for the interesting question, and this last one is very interesting. If we are talking, also very interesting, if we are talking about countries inside intra European economic area, European Union, for example, uh, there is a common and free flow of data. Once we have harmonized in European Union the same rules concerning privacy, health, safety, and then probably it's not probably GDPR, MDR, and AI Act is functioning uh, in an equal manner in all EU countries. But if you are talking about AI procurement or data collection or data sharing outside EU borders, and here we have to take some care concerning the same technical measures concerning encryption, access limitation data collection, and then also using more tied contractual measures, legal measures, in order to, for example, submit our, how can I say, our business partner outside the European Union to the same rules of the European Union in order to provide to the data subject the same safe environment concerning the rights on privacy, health, and fundamental rights. So,
okay. Thank you. I don't know if is there any other question in the audience for Yuri? Okay. So if not, I will thank again Yuri for this clear and helpful overview of this legal side of collecting health data to train artificial intelligence models, and how it ties with the MDR and the AI Act. Thank you, Yuri, and thank you in the audience for the questions. We will now move to the second part of this webinar with the presentation by Catarina Rodrigues. Catarina, as I already said, is a clinical research associate and a startup expert at Deutsche A Braga. She has expertise in regulatory and clinical evaluation of new products, including medical devices. And Catarina has experience in supporting sponsors and researchers in navigating the submission process required by competent authorities, ensuring compliance and facilitating the approval of medical technologies. Catarina, please feel free to begin when you are ready.
Thank you for the presentation, Juliana. I will now share my screen. So,
we can see.
First of all, I would like to thank Health Cluster Portugal for the invitation, particularly to Patricio. Today, I would like to invite you to follow along with me the regulatory journey that one needs to follow in order to clinically validate an AI-based software as a medical device. So let's suppose that my main objective is to enter the European market by having a CE marking software. So I have to make a pre-market clinical investigation. And during the pilot stage, I can perform several and very different types of study. For example, if I am at a very early stage of development, I may need to train my algorithm. And in order to have access to clinical data to train the algorithm, I will need to submit a clinical study to the local ethics committee and to the data protection officer of the hospital that I choose to obtain the data. Also, in the pilot stage, I can perform other types of studies, such as usability studies. I can perform first-in-human studies. And from the point that I choose to use that data for the conformity assessment to obtain CE marking, I need to submit the study to the national authorities. And in here, I mean INFARMED and SEIC. SEIC is the National Ethics Committee for Clinical Research. And while we don't have EUDAMED available, EUDAMED is a platform, a European platform that help people to follow along throughout the whole journey of the or life cycle of a medical device. We are using RNEC, which is the national platform to submit the clinical studies. So now that you are confident about your product, you may be wanting to perform the same study or a similar study in a larger sample size. And in this case, you will also have to submit the study to the national authorities, being this a pivotal study. And right now, you may be wondering, how can we submit these studies? In the case of the local submission, we have to submit the study protocol. The study protocol is basically a document with the rationale, the objectives, the study design, and the study plan, and the statistical analysis that you will be performing. You will need to submit the informed consent form, if applicable. And as Yuri said, the informed consent will be the legal base for us to process the health data. The case report form, which is the platform that can be in paper or electronic, where we will be introducing the data retrieved from the study. The GDPR compliance statement. So we need to make sure or we need to show that we are compliant with the GDPR. The data protection impact assessment that Yuri already talked about earlier. We need a local board authorization for the study to be implemented, and we need to have the team qualifications. Of course, many of these documentation is provided by the manufacturer, but other information like the local board authorization and team qualifications are provided by the clinical site. And of course, there are many sites that might have some different documents that are mandatory from site to site. Regarding the submission to the national authorities, if you scan this QR code, you will have access to SEIC, to the website from SEIC, where you will have access to the checklist of documents that you need for the submission. And today I will go through all the folders that you need to upload. So first we have a folder that is the administrative folder in which we have to upload a cover letter for the study. A clinical research plan that is basically the study protocol and also a synopsis. Medical device documentation. In here, I will just highlight the investigator brochure, which is a document that states all the information, all the clinical and non-clinical information about your software. You will also have to provide the manual of instructions and the labeling of the software. On a third folder, you would have to upload the patient-facing documents, meaning the informed consent form, any other documentation that the participants might contact with. And you would also have to upload the insurance certificate for the study. On the fourth folder, you have to make sure that the investigators and the facilities are in line with the requirements. This means that the clinical site will have to deliver site suitability document in which they state that they have the conditions to conduct the study. And regarding the investigators, you have to upload, for example, the CVs. If you have, for example, a comparator device, you have to provide all the conformity documentation regarding this device also. And if you find any documentation that wouldn't be uploaded in the other folders and that you find important and relevant for your study, you can upload on the last folder in the other documentation. So right now, our medical device is already on the market and the software is CE marking bearing. And you may be wanting to perform other studies. Although your software is already on the market, you want to evaluate anything that you want to evaluate. And for example, if in this clinical study, if you want to, if you need to subject the participants to additional invasive and burdensome procedure, you don't need to submit the study to Infarmed. You just need to notify Infarmed, but you need to get the approval from SAIC. But for example, if you want to assess the user experience and the feedback, you want to collect the feedback from the physicians or from the patients that use your software, you can perform a study that needs to be submitted to the local ethics committee where you want to implement the study and to the data protection officer. But now, if you want, for example, to add a new feature on your software, you need to go back on this timeline and you need to perform the pre-market clinical investigations. And if you ask me, do I have to go through all these stages? Maybe you won't. This is very case specific. And from case to case, we need to evaluate at which stage you need to begin while trying this new feature. So, there are some situations in which you can perform the studies only with retrospective data. And in that case, the study will not be under the DMDR, and thus it must follow the national law for clinical investigation. This means that if you are using retrospective data in your studies, you will be submitting your study locally to the local entities. So I hope that I helped you understand a little bit more about the regulatory pathway regarding the submission process of AI-based softwares as medical device. And I would just like to give you this take-home message that every case is unique and we need a careful case-specific evaluation. This is the key to successfully navigating regulatory submissions. So thank you for your attention, and I am available to answer any questions that you might have, or if you want to contact me in the future, you can always send me an email.
Thank you so much, Catarina. As Catarina was saying, I invite you all to leave your questions now in the Q&A tool. We have already there a question for Katarina. Why we don't have the European clinical study database available? This relying on GENEC.
Because it is not already finished. We have that for clinical trials with medicines. Yodamed is only it's being constructed right now. So in the next years, we hope that we have Yodamed available to submit the studies through that portal.
While we wait for more questions from the audience, Katarina, I have one. So, in your experience, how open are the national healthcare institutions to collaborate in clinical studies involving sensitive data?
Involving sensitive data. So, in our experience, we feel that the national authorities are open to collaborate with us. Since we work with the national authorities and to the local entities, for example, in the local entities, we have a close relationship with the data protection officer, which makes us like have a very how do I say?
It's easier
It is
to
very
reach
easy
them.
to reach them and dialogue and to, for example, if you have a question, they are always available to answer them. So we are always learning with them. So and they are open to explaining us the best way to perform the studies while being compliant with the GDPR.
And related to this question, I have another one that is the healthcare institutions to perform. I'm going to start from the beginning. To perform a clinical study in a healthcare institution, this healthcare institution has to have some kind of certificate or not, or this is only for the promoter of the study.
I don't believe that they don't have to have a specific documentation from what I know, but they do have to have the conditions to implement the study. And clinical sites with experience already have those conditions. And if they have an ethics committee and a data protection officer, it's also good for them so the studies can be evaluated more faster.
Okay. We have here other questions from the audience. Can you give an indication of expected timelines for those processes so that startups starting pilots can plan for this?
Yes, it depends a lot on different things. If you want to submit the study to the national authorities, it can take up to 3 months, but it can take less time. It depends a lot on the questions that they make us. So if they don't have any question regarding our study, the process is very smoothly and it can take less time. Regarding the local submissions, it can be very different from site to site. So I can't give you that information because that depends from the site that you want to use for your study.
Thank you. Another question is a study to develop/improve a software already in public use and using retrospective data to develop and validate this new improvement. Should we need as a clinical site to submit it to ethics and entity bodies and the sponsor? I don't know if you understand the question.
So I believe they want to improve an already marketed software, retrospective data.
Using retrospective
Do they
data.
need to submit
Should we
the
need?
study? So, for example, We have a study ongoing from a sponsor, and they are doing exactly that. And they need to submit the study. For example, if they need the clinical data from the Hospital Braga, the study will have to be submitted to the local entities of Hospital Braga. So the study is submitted locally.
Okay. Thank you. And the other question is, what is the main challenge from the perspective of a software as a medical device integration in the healthcare providers?
Maybe I should read the question.
Okay. Are you able
What is
to
the
read
main
it?
change? What is the
Challenge
main challenge from the perspective?
of a software as a medical device integration in healthcare providers.
I would say that, and this is my point of view is the acceptability from the users of the device. Um, for example, we have a case in which the sponsor created or had an idea for a device, and then they went to the physicians, and these physicians were like, "This is not very useful." So I think the main challenge is to create something with added value for the physicians or for the patients who will use the technology.
And I have a question that is in that during the pilot stage, there is the phase of development and then the phase of
Conformity assessment.
yeah. Which is the border between them? How we decide we are no longer developing and we have the product developed and now we are checking the conformity?
This is a great question, and I perhaps I would say that specifically in softwares, we never end developing.
Okay.
Because sometimes, and during the studies, for example, we have a study in which we have physicians that are using the software to compare with the AI software. And we were training with the physicians, and they found something that was going to be that could be better on the software. So we are already on a very advanced stage, and you can always make changes to the software. But of course, now maybe answering your question, I made that. I divided the process because in a very early stage of development, we won't necessarily use that information for the conformity assessment. For example, sometimes you have a device, a hardware that has a software embedded. And for example, you may want only to test if the device can transmit the information for the computer and make usability studies just to check if everything is okay, because you need to have this kind of information to be confident to move on to a big pilot study. And I would say that is the difference.
Okay. Thank you so much, Katarina. I think there are no other questions from the audience. So we are reaching the end of today's sessions, and to our speakers, Yuri and Katarina, once again, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
insights and for sharing your expertise and experience with us today. And to all participants, thank you for joining us. We hope you found the session informative and helpful. And before we wrap up, just a few quick notes. If you are an SME, we encourage you to explore the services available through the DigiHealth PT, our digital innovation hub for health, and you can find more information in our website. Also, I would like to invite you to stay connected with Health Cluster Portugal and EIT Health through our digital platforms and social media, where we share updates on our initiatives and upcoming opportunities. And lastly, I invite you all to attend to the final session of this webinar series that will be on the April 11. It will be about opportunities in the Asian market. So you can scan the QR code on the screen for more details. And so thank you all, and hope to see you all there on April 11, and have a nice week ahead.
So thank you, Juliana.
Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
all.